Hi, everyone. So I am thrilled to introduce you to tonight's visiting reader, Sara Moore Wagner. If this is your first time being introduced to Sara, I am especially excited for you. I'm Liz Britt. I'm also a creative writing BFA alum from the class of 2004, student of Lawrence and Abby's, a Prairie Margins contributing editor and MAR intern. But I'm here to celebrate my greatest gift from this program, Sara. Sara will be the first to tell you that she did not excel in undergraduate academia, but her gift, her voice, as you will witness, was destined for recognition, only dependent upon how far she would take it. We took very different paths. Let's see. I lost my spot, everyone. So we took very different paths after college. While I was eager to chase my publishing industry dreams, her next step was teaching ESL in Korea for 3 years, eventually returning home 8 months pregnant with her son, Cohen. At the time, she couldn't see her path through motherhood while realizing her own authentic success, but she never abandoned her potential. I always knew from the first read that I would be back here. So this place is sacred for me, and this moment is magical for us. Sara and I met in this room in 2000. Besides one other clueless freshman, we were the only ones to show up to Prout Chapel reading series the first week of school. I anxiously and intimidated by anyone else who identified as a writer or anyone in general who might look or speak at me, walked into the room, realized there was only 2 people in the pews, and couldn't just turn around and run. So I took a seat in the way back and waited. Sara warmly waved me over, and as we all acknowledged that no one else was coming, that's where 2 twin flames first sparked. While we were studying the same program, our classes never overlapped. We never competed here. We rather rooted each other on and dazzled in each other's writing. Our bond instead was rooted in our deep, gritty connection to surviving unsafe childhoods in different corners of Ohio. We did so many stupid things with each other here that do not revolve around writing at all. We grocery shopped at the Subway restaurant walk-in fridge after hours while Sara was the store manager. And her fridge was always overflowing with bulk bags of shredded lettuce, triangle slices of white cheese, and bags of rolls. We lived together our senior year in a very haunted residence on a hill off campus that was later replaced with a parking lot. And we bonded many days over what we called our fancy lunches, watching psychic Sylvia Brown on the Montel Williams show. Looking back at college, I'm losing this one again. So looking back at college, we were both so radiant in our much earned freedoms and freedom from the stress of our home lives. She has always been true to herself and has known her worth. She shares her experience without shame and attracts people who are authentic and live the life they want where they are. She's a dedicated writer who knows how to put in the work needed to achieve the cornucopia of success she is enjoying now. That brings me to her bio. Bless you. Sara Moore Wagner is the author of 3 prize-winning full-length books of poetry. Lady Wingshot, winner of the 2023 Blue Lynx Prize, forthcoming in 2024. Swan Wife, that's a Cider Press Review Editor's Prize from 2022. And Hillbilly Madonna from Driftwood Press Manuscript Prize, 2022. And the author of 2 chapbooks. Tumbling After, published by Redbird Chapbooks, 2022, and Hooked Through, published in 2017. She is also a 2022 Ohio Arts Council Individual Excellence Award recipient, a 2021 National Poetry Series finalist, and the recipient of a 2019 Sustainable Arts Foundation Award. You're incredible. So her poetry has appeared or is forthcoming in many journals and anthologies, including Gulf Coast, Sixth Finch, Waxwing, Beloit Poetry Journal, and the Cincinnati Review, among others. You can find her at www.saramorewagner.com. Please put your hands together to welcome tonight's reader, the most exquisite Sara Moore Wagner.
That already made me cry like 4 times, so I gotta calm down a minute. And to do so, I'm gonna read something a little bit bitchy. Hold on. So also, part of my experience at Bowling Green, and a lot of you have probably experienced that, was the end of your college readings. So the final reading that you do before you graduate. And at mine, I stood up here in this very spot and I read a bunch of poems, and I was really nervous back then. And people came up to me, they were like, "Oh, that was good." And then I remember this one guy came up to me and he said, "You use I a lot in your poems." Have any of you had someone say this to you? Yeah. And it kind of, it's been something I carry with me. And it's been something I've thought about, especially as it relates to male writers and the way I is seen differently for women and men. And I was reading Thoreau and reading Walden, and in it he has this kind of tangent he goes on about how entitled he is to use I. So I wrote this poem, and this poem is for that guy way back then, and it's called After Walden. I'm leaving out the I as if it were bread on the grocery list, as if it were an empty egg carton filled with soil. Leaving out the I, that small soldier of egoism. Let it out like those little painted ladies the children grew from caterpillars, right before a rainstorm. How they hop on the grass, and there's the dog. Isn't it beautiful? Nature wants to break open each moment. Face or mouth, needle jabbed into a bicep. Mother, how much should we do before it's time to give a body over to science or to ashes, to dress it in its best things? How can the speaker ask about best practices? We are leaving out the I, have left the I like the children we never wanted in the kitchen at her grandmother's, mouth full of dry toast asking why. We don't know why, have never known why a man or anyone else goes into the woods alone, what he expects to be there when he comes back. Something hot, like a body or meal, something like why and when, something to calm him. And Thoreau tells us every man is tasked to make his life worthy. And it's only the women who want to go out and claim the I like a city, which is our city, who want to stand in the rain undone by it. So I decided for this reading, I'm going to take you through a little bit. I had the vast gift and blessing of having both my books, my debut books, come out this year, but they were years of work. And somehow it just happened that they both kind of hit and sparked at the same time. But originally these two books that I have here were one book, and it kind of spanned my childhood through my marriage, and it was a lot for one book. And as I sent it out a couple times and nothing happened, I realized that it was really two books. One about the concept of being a wife and being married, and one about where I come from, where my parents come from. We are urban Appalachians, which means relocated from Appalachia to a city, and kind of the effects of what that means, of the opioid epidemic, of growing up in the environment that I grew up in. And it's called Hillbilly Madonna. So I'll start by reading you a few poems from Hillbilly Madonna, and then we'll move on. This one's called Pre-Heroin. My sister and I follow the wood planks of the railroad tracks downtown. We bought a box of Crimson Manic Panic, split two ways, bright red like Tori Amos, shirts tied up, tan bellies. It's a scorcher, the woods mirage, dirt beneath sweat, unrinsed dye rivulets our faces. I say how much this means to me to be here with her, walking this path alone to the fair, where I won't have any money, but I'll bat my done-up eyelashes at boys until they buy me all the different colors of licorice and enough tickets to ride the Ferris wheel with each one, my backseat sticking to the vinyl. Every boy has wet hands that soak the baby hairs on my thigh. I'm sunburnt. It hurts to be touched, but I keep going, around and around until night comes, and they turn on all those green lights. The rides look like their own city, incandescent. I could be under the sea or on the moon, full of sugar and sun. The breeze just feels so good. My sister doesn't want to ever go home. No one is looking for us yet. It ain't time. We squeeze into a little photo booth with the last of our change. Later, I think that picture was so beautiful. How everything matched then. Our sweaty white tees, red faces, splotchy oranging hair. How much power we had that night. Just enough to be taken away. And this one kind of goes along with the last one. It's called Girlhood Landscape, and it was important to me to characterize the landscape of girlhood, how much freedom there is as a child, and then how much of that disappears once you're expected to be a woman. So this one, as I mentioned, is Girlhood Landscape. My sister and I buy neon orange fingernail polish and candy cigarettes. We steal strawberry jam packets from the diner and sit by the railroad tracks, painting our nails and sucking out jam. We are all glossy. We jump from plank to plank with a stick of candy between our fingers, smoking and skipping over the boards like stones in a wide river. I tease her hair up just like Reba McEntire. You look so good, I say. The sky is a corset. It holds us like breath. We put our last pennies on the rails when we hear the train whistle miles down. We jump back, stand just where the conductor can see us, hips out. One day a boy will reach out of that train, I say, lift us up into the caboose like packages, and think of all the candy, the daylight, the lip gloss, the grape pop, think of all that fun. But she doesn't want to. Her hand in mine, she says, what I want is to be here with you. On the way home, I pick an orange tiger lily with my messy orange fingers because I want to remember blooming, because I think I could just bloom. So another part of this is kind of the second stage, which goes into addiction and drug use and how prevalent that is in my community and in my own life, how lucky I was to escape addiction where others did not. So it was really important for me to paint a picture of that. And so I have two kind of different poems which take their take or which say something about that. And the first is Heroin as Women's Work. This is my first tool, a needle, chiseled from bone, split-headed as Zeus. I work it back and forth, stitch through the tapestry, draw the thread I brushed, then spun, choke the wool in my fair hands. Watch me weave. I'll make it soft as the rest of this world. I've built it with this sharp little point, cinch together the vast net we drop into the pond. I feed him even with this quiet movement, back and forth. Today, I make something beautiful. I give him little bits. First, my sleep. Take the smooth silk of my eyes, the yellow of my hair. Wine dark work this. Toil. Fold my garments around the bones of every window. Black out the corners. I want to lose myself in this. To tangle. Bring me a beam to tie these threads. A reed to strike it down. Labor light. The blush of these cheeks. Bring me something to beat. Like God, or at least to see what I've made of it all. And on my tapestry, I'll show you what I've learned about God. That a man will take you no matter how beautiful you make this world, no matter how beautiful you make it. Kind of a companion to that is a poem called Masculine Epidemic. It's like the world slows to a stop when you're high. A plummet into the water at the quarry could be a movie montage. There is the boy, brother, bull-headed poppy in the field, falling heavy and red to the earth from a taut stem. That stem connecting him to his childhood and our father, full of whiskey, to our father's arms. Before he hits, he sends his cry into the stones around him. Imagines these last words, the last breath, the man he never wanted to be, the girl he saw running and wanted to catch and tie, the last bite of bread he took, fresh baked, the heat from the oven, how it called him to enter and walk through like Shadrach, unscathed as the Christ. In the myth of the falling man, the man does not always die. Because a man is not a man until his father says he is, our brother will climb the tallest face of the quarry, dive naked, nostril full of brown sugar heroin, smack the ice below like a mosquito against a windshield. We'll feel like Icarus mid-flight. We'll not think of our mother, just how the clouds cradle him, finally held, warm as this winter is. How close that sun. I think I got one more hillbilly Madonna poem. I'm saving time because I've told some of you, I've got two more real quick here. Because I have a 15-minute long poem about Buffalo Bill's Wild West show that I'm going to read at the end here. So get ready for that. Get comfortable. Okay, this one's called Idle and Lawless. And whenever I read like Girlhood Landscape, I like to read Idle and Lawless because Girlhood Landscape's at the beginning and Idle and Lawless is at the back, and they're sisters. One is the before and one is the after. Idle and lawless. All beautiful like the side of the hill, dirt and rocks and wildflowers, the mosquitoes low over the rain-filled tire tracks, bees hover, test the sugar in our sweat. With lit cigarettes pressed between our lips, we flick the ash onto the wet side of the earth. We are playing boys, Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn. The creek is high. We wade barefoot, jeans rolled up to our inner thigh. We are looking for an image to latch onto, to start us rolling through the rocks. We want to run from something, towards something, to solve the mystery, to get out. I don't want to be Tom, I say, because he was always clowning, and let's be real, I am the smart one. We'll build a raft from all these sticks. We'll leave you with that needle in your arm, like a box of stolen gold. We'll leave you because I can, and making you this story just as a blood oath. I will borrow your lines and flee west. I am always the one to run from it. I'm always the one to run. Here's my last one, which I'll read. I don't read many poems. There are a lot of poems about my dad in here, and I don't really read many of them because he died of COVID last year. And right before this book came out, and I had a lot of real mean poems about him. So sometimes I read this poem, which is a little bit more forgiving poem. This one's called Even If These Promises Are True. In the spring, the oak trees bud leaves small as a mouse's ear. All the fathers abandon their children, wives folded into torn sheets, to go hunt morels, tucked close to the bark, oak, ash, elm, hickory, sweet naked morning, shoeless and stripped as the apple orchard. And then why does the morel love a tree? Tied either to roots or dirt, they grow and regrow, and our Father never knows enough to tell us why. Just that a fungus, bulbous and blonde as a daughter, comes back and back again each year, triggered by the loss of winter, a snap of warmer days. The first promise, you've overcome it. You will overcome it. Wake to our Father hovering over you with a dish of them, meaty and tender, sautéed simply in fresh Amish butter, or battered and fried, stuffed full of cream cheese, and you will eat and eat until you feel better for it, until you forgive him for it, for abandoning you to hunt, for developing his eye to always turn to the earth, to the dark soil, to the roots, then body of the sycamore, where if nothing is budding, at least he can tap it, drink that water sap, keep on. Okay, so I will transition us to my life, which is not so much about place as identity. I'm going to read you this first poem, which someone mentioned earlier, which is about place, and I think we'll show you how these books connect. But these poems go more into the concept of what it means to be a wife and how much of ourselves we're expected to let go of to become that. This first poem's called Like I Won't Take Something From You. Let's see how I'm doing on time. Okay. I bounced to you in the back of my father's truck, over the gravel road stretching into cornfields. So late in the evening, no one was outside on the porch. swinging in the night. Only the crickets and cicadas, the lambs bleating, my father, lit cigarette ashing back into my hair. You say you love my hair, how golden it is, like new hay rolled into tiny suns. The ones we pass on the road now, I next to you in your brand new car. How my hair looks almost copper, like pipes. Listen, I still feel that lit bit of ash, the ember flung back. How my hair was on fire, the truck was on fire. My father, still driving with Guns N' Roses so loud you couldn't hear or feel me rolling around, that I turned into a combine harvester, my teeth horizontal and so straight. This is how I came to wear my hair like this, the way you love it, the way it blows in the evening wind, almost like ready stalks. This one I'm going to read because it has a little bit of BG history in it. There used to be a really gross lake out by like Harshman Kreischer area, and that it's filled in now. It was really not sanitary, but I put it in a poem. It's called Ball and Chain. At Michael's, in the aisle where they sell cake toppers, there's a whole section of tiny porcelain figures, and in each of them, the husband is attempting escape. He is running away, and the bride has her hands on his shoulders or the tail of his tuxedo. She's holding him by the shoe. Her father is there with his big gun to the temple of the groom, who is casting a glance to the back door of whatever church they're in, past whatever altar. My mother holds one out to me, says, "Look, wouldn't this be cute?" Remember in college when we sat together by that lake that was so dirty no one, no matter how wasted, would ever swim? And I dipped my toes in, and you called me Swan. You said you'll go where you want. It was maybe then I knew you saw me, how I wanted to fly or float to cover, how even a mute swan will hiss and attack if you get too close, how you called me beautiful then, so beautiful and so loud, the way I'd hoot up to the stars, the way I showed my teeth. We curved our necks in to make that symbol, which comes from the swans, the way they bow, the way they sound, the way a heart can be made from two bodies, the way the honeycomb of my wing was built for yours. And I say to my mother, if anyone is running, it's me. But I won't, because it's you, because you've built me a nest on the bank of my childhood, one where I can sit and watch each day break slow, little cygnets aglow in early dawn. Let's just look at this to see how, okay. Now, I'll skip that one. I've got a lot of poems in here where I redo myths, and I'll go ahead and read you. I was talking earlier about Housewife as Rumpelstiltskin, so we'll trade a poem out for that. And I was really interested in exploring personas, particularly personas that you wouldn't associate with the things I'm talking about. And so Housewife as Rumpelstiltskin, I think, really does that, or I hope does. I stomp my foot into the ground, 1, 2, 3, and the earth breaks open like an egg. The viscous plastic mantle, liquid, and I shake, 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 tectonic, because you knew my name, because you named me. I'm torn in two, or else I tear myself in two, as some versions say. But haven't I always been split between this world and my body, between mother and father, between sky and the center diamond of this tiny planet, diastasis recti? At night, I dance around a fire, chanting, you will never know me. And by fire, I mean the kitchen table I clear into the empty trash can. By dance, I mean conform to it. I thought I was spinning this gold to weave something beautiful, an elaborate wing, thin and strong as chitin, sparkling in the summer, hands spun. But here I am, caught now, trickster now, and with both my hands, I'll show you what to do. Okay, this one takes its title from Her Kind by Anne Sexton. Of course, we can't have a book about fairy tales without talking about Anne Sexton a little bit. So I took the first line, or the last line, a woman like that is not ashamed to die, and it's my title. And hopefully you'll see some of Anne in here. I have a thimble for an eye, tin-sided, guarded. At night, the boy I married puts his finger inside the socket. just to see. Out comes a worm. This is a ghost story. I am by the campfire with my father, but he is asleep. He fell off just at the climax, boot so close to the flames he ignites. Now my father is a burning bush, and I can just make out his skeleton beneath the flames. For once, I recognize myself there, and also God there. My father says he's come to get me, to take me out. Take off your shoes. Barefooted, clean-faced, I'm back in my own bedroom. It's night and the window is open. Through a tear in the screen, I can hear my mother's voice whisper the story where the wife finds all the bodies in a locked room, where the closets all have spikes and on every spike is a blonde head. How lightheaded I am suddenly. The strands of my hair could be webbing. I put my body over my husband's, hair cascading down. I've caught you, I say. I won. And with my tin eye, I'll watch the blood drain out of his face, and I will want him to say my name forever, as it was before him. This is my name, the first one, unfather, my only name. One or two more from here. Okay, this one's called A Housewife as Anastasia Romanoff. I was really obsessed with Anastasia when I was little, and I was really mad when she wasn't really alive, like they found her bones. So this poem is kind of a reaction to that. There are fractions of moments I forget who I am. Like when I'm sitting on the couch waiting out the evening, the clock dialing up each number so slow. I fold my hands as I would a jewel into my hem. And where did I go just then? Identify my body now for me, a long shadow on the wall behind where my children play. I want to escape death as I do my life each night, taking off this skin, stepping into the mass grave of sleep. Even if it isn't me escaping, but some other girl with my same nervous eyes and fake front tooth. Some other who will eat all the chocolates with her gloves on, not care about what's spoiled, about the body, identity. What can you identify of me beyond this show I put on each morning, my face? And even when you see my bones laid out, you won't know me. In the evening, I feel that settling or setting. You won't know me, but I'll be the one you look for. There's one more here. I want to read from Swan Wife. We'll see if I get time to get any of my Bible ones before I think so. Sorry, I talked to myself a lot. Okay, this one's called Anti-Pastoral. People are always like, oh, you write a lot about nature, you like nature. Actually, I don't like nature that much. I like to look at nature, but nature scares the shit out of me because I'm really afraid to die. Okay, and that's what this is about. It's called Anti-Pastoral. Don't retreat, I say to the screen, to the trees and sloping hillside leading to the lake I call Magic Lake, in Ohio, born landlocked as a river. I want that still body of water, the ripples mimicking that slow beat inside. No, I won't die, I say to a morning so cold all the eggs have frozen in all the nests. Is it this quiet where you are? Can you hear the birds trot the naked limbs of the oak trees? Can you see where the water touches the wood and is transformed into a blanket of leaves? I am not fallen. I'm not falling yet. I'm not made thick-skinned enough to weather this world. So I close the window and lock it. Look, birds, I can lock it. Look, sky, I am inside. Have seen what you do to a hawthorn. Have seen every fallen piece of timber. Those are my bridges. I will walk them home. Okay. So I'll read you maybe just one or two of these Bible-y church poems I've been talking about, which I'm doing around art and artistic interpretations of Jesus. And the one I'll read you before I start my big myth of the Wild West. I'll read you two. This one's called The Dead Christ. The dead Christ is not like the live or risen Christ. The dead Christ wears the hems of his pants out as they sweep over the asphalt outside your door. Dead Christ carries the cross with him like chains, is trapped in the body, and with the body he goes into the cave or under the foundation of a building. Grapes from his chest laceration, marbles from fertile earth, clustered and smooth relics of the wine his mother sponged into his mouth. The dead Christ knows, at last, where the dead go, and he meets them, all those little souls with all those little bells and sorrows wailing into shadows like Achilles. The dead Christ meets Achilles. Spoons sheep's blood into his open mouth, says, "Tell me, Achilles, what it means to try, to rise and fail." The dead Christ will never fail, will take a breath of that dust deep into his stilled lungs and exhale over everything, like white ash or snow, urge us to let go. Pain. What pain does he take from us beyond that grave? And what grows from the blood the dead Christ drips across the land so many have walked before him? Wait. It's weird to read that in the church. I'm going to tell you, is there a cross now? Okay, I'll read one more of those Jesus poems. And really the point of this is about, growing up Pentecostal and evangelical, what religion and what of God I'm going to give to my children. And so this one's called How I Teach My Daughter Heaven. Somewhere the sky is worse, is hinged and opens like the door to the cellar, where there's something you hear down there but can't see. Your father or an opossum, great weasel of the foundation. Sky opens like a cellar, and there is the God of my childhood, fierce and buttoned up to the collar, polished as a church shoe. Bland, uniform God, in sync with the ocean, turning of the axis of the earth. Boy God, man God, chariot God, God of the rugged mountain ranges and vast blonde prairies. Maybe you have never wanted the prairies he holds out like a rope. Maybe you'll tell him, close the door, let you watch the clouds shift over that vast expanse a little more. Imagine there isn't an exit or a hand or any man up there promising you a bit of this world. Be in a backyard. Let me watch you from the window, not disturb you. I know what that's like. It's all gone off you. You're a bee in a blossom, great rhinoceros of the grassland. You hold it all inside your rib cage, expanding and contracting like every version of the universe. Okay, I gotta take a breath because here we go. So like Liz said and I told you, a few weeks ago, I got the call that I won the Blue Links Prize for my manuscript that I spent the past few years working on, which is now called Lady Wingshot. Was originally called Little Shirt Shot, but another book has that title. And I was writing all these random poems about Annie Oakley, different parts of her life. I talked to random people. I talked about Dolly Parton and Freud and the Wright brothers and all these different things. And I needed a poem to kind of contextualize everything and to bring the Wild West show to life. So that's where this poem, which is called First Myth of the Wild West, comes from. It takes about 15 minutes to read. I'll go through it. It's very long. And I just have to give you a trigger warning. There is the scalping that occurs in this poem. Now, the reason this is in here is because it was actually part of the Wild West show. It is Buffalo Bill is doing the scalping. So this is something I feel like history doesn't talk about as much, how many white people were the ones doing the scalping. And so it's kind of a little bit magical in here, but just if you're sensitive about scalping, just warning. I guess we're all sensitive about scalping, but yeah. First myth of the Wild West. 1. The first time Sitting Bull saw Annie Oakley perform, she shot the flame off 24 candles, one for each year of her life so far. What to give a girl who extinguishes without cracking any wax, whose bullets come out clean, who nudges things from her husband's lips without breaking his teeth? Sitting Bull spoke in his own language, said devil under his breath, and she heard daughter, bowed low and showed the soft top of her head. He could see how small, clean and modest, covered in taupe fabric, wound round her like a bandage. Spider, he said, and she heard sister. Remember sister, she heard him say, how I hid in the Canadian hills until every bit of my clothing was caked in mud and hung from me like spent silk. I have an appetite, he said. So she fed him ice cream. It's cold, she heard him say. So she gave him a blanket. He whispered fame, and she heard name, signed a photograph of herself, gave him her shoes. Walk with me, he said, to the place we can meet, tributaries in one man's stream, nobleman of the Wild West, and we, 2 figures orbiting. Shoot for me, he said, shoot for me. 2. What have we extinguished? We who rope the cattle, run the beasts of the field round and round in circles like rubber balls in a great funnel. It's a game to see just how many we can hit straight in the head, to not spoil the meat, and then it's fun to leave. Let the buzzard pick and the flesh return to dust. We're bored and we have needs. We build a railroad of bones from coast to coast. Rail cars of hides and pelts shoot from these cars, out windows thin as fingernails. We build engines and later cars and later airplanes. We paint our faces with bone-handled brushes. We blood our lips to make them look redder, that hue more beautiful, easier to look at. One day, there was no buffalo or bird song, no more wood spiders weaving in and out of the boards hand-cut and craft from the ribs of the earth. We made this land from bones left to spoil in the sun, piling up into great hills and canyons and blood filtering through the dirt until the soil was red and the lakes were clear and we drink from them with our hands, wash, dress in leather and wool. There was nothing for the hunter looking over the lip of the cliff into that vast expanse of nothing, nothing to do but build a fire, sing his song again and again, pantomime, burlesque each fight, how he did not die, astride the last horse like it was the whole earth. He tamed and could make jump and stop and slide into place, Stetson and spurs, and the proud quiet of a cowboy, romantic. We made these origins romantic, the undoing of a country like anything else undone. 3. The American myth was not oral tradition, not passed down mother to child, whispered into cradles, rocked into the crevices of houses, not stored in scrolls behind fireplaces, built into pillars to hold them. The American myth was a dime novel, manufactured range home, was a man on a horse called Promise or Pebble, riding in as a stranger to a new town with swaying saloon doors, spurs, and just a hint of danger. Black cat, sulfur, demons painted and screaming through the stories, pushed back into pockets of America, sewn into blankets and painted on clay. Figurines sold in truck stops, was Howdy Partner and Little Lady. The marvel of a man at a dinner party who could produce from his pockets bits of the Wild West. This is how we tamed that great frontier and desert country, wilderness and never-ending land, which led eventually to gold, they say, where a man could get rich or die, could ride into sunset, return with sunrise. You can have something here. Could be that black and white feller in the movies with a tin can and a plan, under the stars which spread out high, firing his pistol into the sky like it's his. America, a promise held up like a sheriff's badge. 4. Christopher Lawrence. General Sherman said, "Give them whiskey, kills them like flies." That's a whole part of it. 5. Okay, here's the scalping. Get ready. Okay. 5. When Buffalo Bill took the first scalp for Custer, it was said to be scientific. He made incisions around the hairline, got every follicle, split skin and nerves from bone by moving his knife around below the cleft, like separating wet pound cake from an underfloured pan. Bits stuck to the hard bone. The bare skull reminded him of a grape, of the red beach ball he passed back and forth with his sister in the ocean until it popped midair and was gone, of the toe he stubbed, running in through the screen door to his mother, who'd bandaged it. To be scientific about scalping, Buffalo Bill had to forget his mother. Forget the red trail leading to the place his father was also stabbed in the heart. No one took his father's scalp. No one held it high, waved it like a banner or flag, kept it, passed it down to his children. Custer has been avenged, the paper said, by Buffalo Bill, tall gentleman, king of the West, straightening to his full glory with a fistful of black hair, feathered and decorated. Only the land lasts. But Billy kept that scalp, took it with him into the bath, washed it, braided it, wore it on his head so his own hair took on that stench of spoiled meat, and his men said, "Let it go." Buffalo Bill, never one to let a story go, wore the scalp tucked into his pants, pinned to his vest like a brooch, filled it with champagne and sandwiches, passed it like an offering plate to the children. At night, his mistresses would be made to hold it between their legs, to wash with it in the morning, to kiss it goodbye. He held the scalp like a mother's hand, reverent to the scalp's gentle power of transformation. How like America, stolen and stinking, one, expansion and revolution, metamorphosis, one thing and then the next. 6. And it came to pass others wanted to touch this scalp, believed it to be imbued with the powers of the Plains Indians, mystic sun dances. They laid hands on the man who had cut so tenderly the scalp from bone. He alone could provide the necessary trinkets, dream catchers and beads, baubles and shrunken heads, real outlaws, Sitting Bull on a horse with a peace pipe in his hands, arms scald and trembling from the awl used to slice him open 50 times so he could dance and dream of what would be. Don't touch the white man's things, he said. You will never stop wanting. The red river of his arms moved through to his 2 fingers, which he placed on the lips of the white women who'd come near, just to have him touch them. Taste what I bring. See it. See. 7. On the train, Sitting Bull spoke in the low chuck of the meadowlark. Wolf, wolf, he said. I know wolves. There was thunder, and somewhere a steamboat full of buffalo and horses sank into the Mississippi. Sitting Bull was not captured, no. There was freedom in the stage life beyond assimilation, or so they told him with the contract. He understood fame to be persona. He put on a new face and feathers, picked off the crisp buttons on the shirt given at Standing Rock, set down the government-issued plow. There would be new cities full of lamps and telephones, refrigerators and handguns, brick schools, metal detectors, x-rays, whistling bombs loud as cicadas. Meadowlark, he called. Remember the foxes, the dogs brought in to chase back into the Black Hills, and then how those hills exploded or cracked apart like geodes. Remember gold in these hills, the promise of fortune put on and abandoned like all these bodies left to rot in the fields, the stench of meat. He wore owl feathers, dipped red, starched his clothes straight as his back, shook hands with the man who shared his name, Buffalo Bull, great beast of the Wild West. 8. It was Annie who made them whole. She who had not seen the Indian wars, but was born in the place they built to exterminate those first people. Dark county of broken treaties and homes for the ill or insane or loose women, lost women, she learned to stitch for. She'd stitch acorns and wild roses, blackberries onto the sleeves of their dark dresses, just so they could see Ohio as it was before the general stores and forts, untamed. Put on a face like a lady, one said, late at night while Annie rocked someone else's babe, singing the song her mother taught her, Hush-a-bye, baby, baby not mine. When she made it back home, her mother was remarried, had a garden, collected fat apples for the storeroom, and Annie went into the woods, then into Cincinnati, then into the stadiums where her husband faltered and could not shoot a target, so she took the gun and did it, as always. It was her personality. Inside her little body was the Mississippi, was the whole Ohio River, was the West with its looping horses around a herd of buffalo. She knew to not look at the gun, but at the thing, to point at what you wanted until it fell at your feet, to drown out the cries with a hush-a-bye until America was lulled into the gentle rocking of its own representation, turned in on itself, leaping out in a short dress and knickerbockers, entertainment and pride, and a little lady with a wide smile. 9. If there ever was a frontier, a sloping, barren land to take, it's gone. Was part of that great yesterday when a man could put his hands on any bit of land, any tree, any woman, and lay claim, deforest, deflower, own. Sitting Bull asked at first for just the oaks to stay. He loved the shade. 10. It came to be at last. Buffalo Bill and his Congress of Rough Riders gathered in a line. They'd ride on every untamable animal, broncos, bears, great circus lions, house cats, on the backs of their mothers who'd carry them, bucking through the dirt in a circle. They were decorated in the costumes of their origins, red-dipped feathers, turbans, embroidered afghans, blue jeans, belt buckles, corsets and bustles, and fabric from head to copper-tipped toe. They'd wear what they'd come from, stones around necks and baby teeth sewn into hems, gold rings from the hills they ran through, the dirt turned over, wood and tar from the houses turned over, the bullet shell dug out of father's side. They didn't hide their infected eyes behind goggles. You could look right into them. They'd fly each flag high in the stadium, and the color stood for where they'd been, the yellow bile expelled from stomachs, their sister's last little cry. Maybe Bill was once a boy who rode his horse over a nest of baby rabbits, their limbs exploding like fireworks. So now he has fireworks to remind you what men do, what men should do and not mind. After the parade would come the sharpshooters and Annie, flowers blooming at the end of her gun. Annie Oakley with sensible pants, brooches and blouses, shrugs over a formal dress. The thousands in the crowd wouldn't flinch or fear. They'd cheer at that trick where she'd look in a mirror and bang, the sun would unspool. There were generations of little girls in the glint made on the horizon, crawling out of American sky to claim something. Annie, few knew, laid down when she was done, in the little cabin they'd raid at the end of the show, just to know what she'd trimmed away, slowly, with her sewing scissors and that eye, which was a man's eye. Before that final cabin raid was the Battle of Little Bighorn, with Buffalo Bill there, Sitting Bull absent. Bull was not the one to shoot and scalp Custer in the show. It wasn't historically accurate, and anyway, the booze would drown out the more exciting bits, like when Bill would shoot and scalp whoever shot Custer. It went like this. He'd put his knee on the man's neck, just enough to stop the breath. He'd have strawberries in his sleeve and a real scalp, the one he'd won. He'd run his hand over his captive's head, squish the berries deep like gore. Then the other man was gasping. Bill would stand, reddened hand, hold that hair up, fire into the air. Can you see it? That fire, smoke, the image of Annie sleeping in a little bed, waiting for the men to come shouting in. The guns would explode above her. She'd play dead and in the end, bow and cheer. Popcorn and peanut shells, those fireworks and gunfire exploding into the vast wilderness of America. Riddled now with beer cans, fast food containers, factories and farmland, farm hands. A man can work his way up, it goes, with enough grit, a certain kind of man can. This last little part. Let's see how well I do. Hold on before I read it, then I'm gonna just sit down. Okay. The last time the lights turned off for Buffalo Bill's Wild West show, they were big, pulsing electric lights. The stage was a stadium, dirt brushed into place by borrowed and temporary labor. The livestock was pushed a final time into endless train cars, taken to places like Cincinnati and St. Louis for exhibition or slaughter. Annie retired to Ohio, back to her own little hometown, tow-headed and white as the sun on a cornfield. She thought she'd run through the woods again, play at time rolling backward. Somewhere, the old standards were dead or dying. Sitting Bull reached out to her over the vast Midwest, said, "Come to me, daughter, come save me." She heard, "Come pay me," sent him a wooden box full of all her costume jewelry, including that simple golden star he'd wear on the day they raided his tent, shot him straight in the face. But Annie saw space, that he'd been given space, and she laid down on that soft grass to wait for something of her own. Above her, near her, on the same land stolen from the Wyandottes and Delaware in the Greenville Treaty, Ohio's own Wright brothers built and flew their first curved wooden glider, which, to Annie, looked just like a fat Canadian goose. With her exacting aim and bullet, she hit that glider right on the tail, and before her, it transformed into fighter jet, bomber jet, Boeing 707. Commercial airlines sprang up from the soil like soybeans, and the sky was crowded. Annie couldn't find a mark if there ever was a mark. American clouds riddled with white contrails, straight and fair as every hair on her head. And she said, "What have I done?" to every tree she passed on her way back to her little house in the middle of a wide field. Thank you. Wanted to have a question and answer. I feel like Jessica said.
I think we do.
You do? Okay. Yeah. So if anybody has any questions, I would be happy to answer anything. Yes.
Yeah, so it was interesting to hear that first portion of this last poem in which you had Annie Oakley, I believe she was talking to
Sitting Bull.
Yes. And so you can, there's a, I guess the communication where it seems that she's mishearing. and there's like misconstruing of language. Can you talk about like what that's signifying or what's happening in that portion?
So I was talking to the grad students about the complications I felt of speaking in Sitting Bull's voice. So I tried to just limit what he says to what he says and what she heard him say. And this was because I read so many things about Sitting Bull. He had kind of a sense of humor where he would say like offensive things and then his translator would translate them like he was saying like something nice to like all the white people who were his fans. Like he had humor like that where he would kind of like troll people, we say. But and so I was kind of playing on that, his like historical, manipulation with language of pretending not to speak it as much as he did, and then also using it to really attack at the white people who were like really treating him like a character. And I believe that Annie did that. Like she, in the end of the poem, she doesn't go to help him when he wants her help. And she uses him in some ways because he calls her, she uses his name he gave her, Little Sure Shot. He named her that. He said that she was his daughter, and she used that. She used so much of her connection to him in a way to like pump up her fame and character. So I wanted to show how that in a poem with like her misunderstanding and him seeing her as a little more malicious because he calls her spider and things like that. Just to tear down that myth of her being like his daughter, which I think is kind of problematic. Any other questions for me from anyone? Oh yeah.
Hi. So I want to talk about Hillbilly Madonna a little bit because being Appalachian, like there's such a culture tied to that, and it's communal, but also the experience of being Appalachian is personal.
Yeah.
So how do you define for yourself being Appalachian, and how do you convey that definition in your work?
Yeah, I think that you're right. There is no, Appalachian means coming from the region of Appalachia, and it's extended to people who descend from there who, like my family, have moved to urban spaces. It's your roots being in the area, which a quarter of Ohio is Appalachia. I don't know if a lot of people realize that. There's a large chunk of Ohio, all of West Virginia. So it's hard to say like Appalachia's one thing. And there are so many great poets defining for themselves. Savannah Sipple is like a queer poet who writes about Appalachia. And then Crystal Wilkinson is the Kentucky Poet Laureate. And her work about Appalachia is so vastly different from anything. And what was important to me was just to tell my story and my family's story and have that be a little pocket. Whereas people like J.D. Vance like to tell everybody's story. I know that there are parts of my story that do fit into stereotypes, but I wanted to be as real as possible to not say that that's everybody. That's just what my life was like in a lot of ways. Thank you for that question. I think it's important to talk about because people really stereotype Appalachians. Any other questions? Oh, yes.
Sort of on that same track, how do you balance like, the responsibility of talking about your family and people that you care about that have perhaps struggled in ways that you have not, and like honoring that while staying true to the struggle?
Yeah, well, I try not to call anybody out. The nice thing about poetry is you can switch, relationships, you can switch. My father, I mentioned passed, but I gave a lot of the overt drug use things in the book to my mother when it was my father. But I wanted to protect him. And she's read my poems. She knows. I say, poetry's not memoir, And she's like, I know. And she's, so it's about, in creative nonfiction, you have a lot more rules. In poetry, it's like we're telling the truth, but we're not going to tell everybody's secrets. That's what I was really concerned with. Shadowing and revealing. Any other questions? Well, thanks so much for having me. I'm happy to sign anyone. Hold on, sit there, everybody. I want to take a selfie. Hold on. Everybody smile in the background. Okay. And I'm happy to sign books, and thank you for having me. This was amazing. I'm sweaty.
Did I carry any of your books for you while you go back to your class? I'm so proud of you.
Oh, is it okay if I like a mess? Oh, I'm saying that into the camera.
That was so great.